That itself indicates the significance of her compared to me, and I'm more like God. And if that woman wants to have gain some sense of perfection, then she needs to find salvation in Jesus Christ, which is another man. So a woman can only be considered or find her perfection through men, and which has been a problem. And there are other issues, but again, understanding for ourselves how for some Muslim scholars even, this has been, this particular type of, this hadith and others similar to it have led to a particular type of reaction to different social movements, has led to different types of interpretation or the discounting of certain types of interpretations that have arisen historically. So those are things we always have to take into account when we are speaking about or trying to interpret the Quran or interpret many other things. So for instance, another example is that in Surah Al-Ahzab, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فأبين أن يحملناها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان جهولا ظلوما جهولا. That verily we presented the trust to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountains, and they refused to bear it, and they were fearful of it, but man bore it instead. Verily he is oppressive and ignorant. This issue of the amana, the trust, again, so we're still on the subject of theological anthropology. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us and placed a trust upon us, a trust that He presented to the heavens and to the earth and to the mountains, and they themselves were afraid to take on that trust. But what is that trust? What is this a reference to? And this is one thing we need to understand, that many of the scholars of tafsir, Islam or Quranic exegesis, that they have not been able to come to a unified definition or agreement about what actually is this trust a reference to. So for instance, you find that for instance, some groups of Sufis, they'll say that the trust is the ruh itself, the spirit that God has, or the soul that God has placed within the human body, that Allah had presented to the mountains, to the heavens, and to the earth, that He would place His spirit to occupy the human body, or to occupy the mountains or the heavens and the earth. And in doing so, there be certain obligations that come upon them. And so they say, but the human being did not refuse and actually accept to have God placed within them. So this is an understanding. It's a problematic understanding, of course, for normative Islam, but there are many non-Muslims too who accept this type of reasoning. So that is one interpretation. The problem with the interpretation is that, okay, well, animals also have souls, and you follow me? So if the Quran is talking about what the human being has carried and has borne, then what about the animals themselves? Could they also have at least what we call the anime, what the Greeks called, sort of the thing that animates the body? All of us have that, you see. And so that would make that particular opinion problematic. Amongst the soundest of interpretations that I've found, or the most reasonable interpretations I've found, is either that this trust is the trust of khilafah, or stewardship of the earth, and in that particular regard is how we can say that the human being has been created in God's image, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the capacity to rule and to govern and to preserve as He preserves, but to do that with free will and rationality and autonomy. Either that, or as some of the scholars of tafsir say, that the trust is the trust to of righteousness, the trust of bearing reward for righteousness and punishment for unrighteousness. But at any rate, the point is that there are a number of different things that can influence how we interpret the Quran. And this is really what I'm trying to highlight in this particular introduction, that there are a number of different things that can influence the way that we actually understand many different things as we read them. In Surah Ali Imran, I believe it is verse 6, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات. It is He who revealed to you the book. From it there are verses which are clear, they're unequivocal, and there are others which are ambiguous, mutashabihat. There are others which are ambiguous. So in a sense, the Quran itself helps us to develop the proper form of hermeneutic for it itself. It establishes very early that when you read this book, some of these verses will be clear in what they indicate as expressions and also as individual words. And there will be other parts of the book that will not be so clear, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. But as for those who have a type of swerving or deviance and perversity in their hearts, they follow the part thereof which is ambiguous, and some translate as allegorical, seeking discord and seeking their meaning. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. While no one knows their meaning except for God. That's one translation, and the stop is there, that none know it except for God. Another reading has وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. And none know their meaning except for Allah and those deeply grounded or deeply rooted in knowledge. يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلُّ مِنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. They say, we believe in it, all of it is from our Lord. So here you have a verse that actually gives us a principle. Some of verses are clear, some of verses are ambiguous, or some of them we say are allegorical. Now, there are the scholars, with regard to the first type of verse, al-muhkamat, are near a consensus on what is intended by them. Although there's certain details, and people give, some of them give examples of what they mean, and others will give a very short definition of what's intended by muhkam or muhkamat. And the muhkamat verses, those are the verses in the Quran which are easy to understand by anyone who reads them. There are verses and terms and phrases which are univocal in their indication. So for instance, a verse may mention a number. وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتُ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. That divorced women are to wait for 3 quru, for 3 periods. So the word 3 in the verse is univocal, it's muhkam. It's clear, it's unambiguous, it's unequivocal. So 3 doesn't mean 4, can't mean 5. It's clear. Arba'atu ashhur wa ashara. It speaks about women who are in mourning after the death of their husbands, that they should wait 4 months and 10 days. So you have these examples. They're muhkamat in the Quran. Other examples, we made examples of the qisas, the different narratives about the prophets. What happened there. These things that the average Muslim can take benefit from. Of course, you'll find from time to time certain words that have more than one meaning, and those are the points of at-tashabuh, points of ambiguity that the scholars themselves have the obligation or have the authority